Wow, do we have an exciting conversation, exciting topic, exciting podcast episode to share with you all today. This is the very first time that we have ever had anyone on our podcast, ever. Kenlyn, this is the first time. Yes. So everyone, I would love for you to meet Kenlyn. Kenlyn, please, this is the first time ever.
Whoa, that's so insane and then awesome. And thank you. I feel really deeply honored, and maybe we're breaking some new ground here. That's kind of what we do, don't we?
Right. That's exactly how it feels, Kenlyn, is kind of breaking into something new, breaking beyond previous ways of doing stuff. And I think that's part of the theme I want to talk about today. But before we get into themes that we're going to explore and discover, I just want to give you a huge shout out and let everybody know this woman is magic. I've done the Divine Feminine Summit with her last year in 2020, and then this year again in 2021. And not to put any pressure on us, Kenlyn, but there is this, if Kenlyn and I on this really wild day, which is a day where astrology is super intense and super crazy and Mercury is going direct. So I don't know if it's going to happen, but lots of people know us for our capacity to just weave and weave in this really wild way that I don't experience very often with others. And it's already happened a little bit in our intro talk where Kenlyn will share something, and it's just those truth chills. I think we all kind of get them in different ways, but just the chills that pour down. And it was one of the topics that gave me the chills. Kenlyn, when you were sharing about this, bringing the work that we do in retreat and workshop into our lives, into the world. But before that, Kenlyn, can you just share a tiny little bit about yourself, or maybe a lot about yourself, but anything that you feel to share in this moment, even if it's, I'm just going to pass it over to
you. Well, I think it's good to create a context. So for those who don't know, we have been playing together, Sabrina and I, in the Divine Feminine Summit. And that's something that I created at the beginning of 2020 without having a clue what 2020 was going to bring. And then also creating 2021 without having a clue of what 2021 was going to bring. And what I am seeing in myself is that I get to curate a conversation of the feminine that I don't even know what it is. So it's quintessentially feminine that I'm curating something I don't know, but I'm trusting that the feminine way is all of these beautiful strands of multicolored tapestry that I get to be a part of the weaving of that. And so as I step forward and offer things, I'm seeing my own dharma and my own calling become clearer. And for those of you who don't know me from the summit, I used to be a lawyer. And I have to say that because it's like the cosmic joke to me that the goddess would choose me to represent the divine feminine when I truly have embodied the divine masculine.
Yeah.
And I lived it. I felt comfortable in it. I was like a baller. I could sit in a boardroom with men and command, and I loved it. And my awakening process was like a 10-year-long process of basically crying and coming into my heart. And that became the doorway of my awakening into the feminine. So I'll say more probably about all of that, but that's just the context that I find myself in as I have this conversation with you, and what I'm trusting is going to happen between us, and because what I know happens between us is that something new shows itself to both of us and to those who are listening. So if you're listening, be prepared for something new to happen to your
Love
consciousness.
that. I feel you just sprinkling magic dust. And I can very much relate. I was a scientist, and then I was a corporate baller, right? I was in those boardrooms negotiating the shit out of things. And I was the captain of the rugby team, right? So I can absolutely relate to your story, Kenlyn. And I love that you shared that. And I know that so many women, not all, but a lot of women who are part of the rewilding community can relate in some form or fashion, either in their own lives or in lives of women close to them. So love that you've kind of woven that in. There's so much I want to dive into. But what I want to dive into first is I would love, Kenlyn, if you could share with us what you've seen from the 2021 summit. So like you get to curate and you get to see all of these beautiful teachers who are really aligning with the divine feminine, with the path of the feminine. And not even that, I feel like it's even a step beyond just the divine feminine. It's almost this new spirituality. And I don't like saying that because there's all sort of weird connotations to that, but this cutting edge, this, like razor's edge of where we're at in human consciousness, even not just with where we're at with the divine feminine, but where we're at with human consciousness. And I would love to just turn it over to you, Kenlyn, and just hear what you've seen or felt, or threads and synchronicities and weavings that you've seen.
Oh, yeah, this is so awesome. This is so good. So just so y'all know, like I I lived in Boulder before as I was on my spiritual path, and there was a man named Ken Wilber there, and he's in Denver now, but uh, I wasn't hugely influenced by him, but he was in the field, and so I learned a little bit about states and stages. I learned a little bit about a few things, and I'm going to presence one of the things I learned from him, and that is to say that stages of consciousness get created, the next ones get created by the people in the current stage of consciousness. That is exciting to me. So we have a say. We're not just going along. We have a say in how the future unfolds. So in that context, what I'm seeing is that I'm getting glimpses of the future that we're creating. That's like that morphogenetic field that is alive. It is dynamic. Um, and the summit, so like the 2020 in the summit had a completely different flavor than the 2021. And that surprised me because I'm living life in the trenches, as all of you are. Every day I have to feed myself, and we have to go do grocery shopping and do things like that. So I'm not tracking. I don't know that I'm tracking. But then when I start to have conversations, I'm realizing, oh, wow, this is what's happening in consciousness. And I will say, I feel like the feminine is on point and leading it.
Yeah,
And I think
chills.
you've referenced
Totally.
that. Yeah.
That's what,
Yeah.
yep. You and I spoke about this in our talk in the summit too. Yep.
That's right. And so Sabrina, for me in 2020, like Kali Ma was she was like the most popular archetype in the 2020 summit, which I was just like, she hardly got in, right? Except you present, like,
you were like, no, I don't really want to, no.
I mean, all I could imagine was like, the whole thing's not going to work. Like, right. Like death and destruction. And you're like, for love, and I was like, okay, yeah, we can do that.
Like, fine.
Exactly. That's what happened. So she, so that foretold the Pluto wrecking ball and how it was going to wreck marriages, jobs, school, ways of being,
Social
bullshit, people pleasing.
structure. Yeah.
all of it. So the summit ended up foretelling for me like what was going to happen. So that's good news, because then we fast forward to 2021, and the energy of the summit. My first interview was, you're not going to believe this. My first interview was sacred courtesan.
Oh, of course. Of
I'm like,
course.
I didn't plan that. That's just how like I get to my schedule, and it's like that's that, right?
Yep.
So Saida Desile comes in, and she's the founder of the Jade Egg movement, and she starts to talk about feminine empowerment with sexuality.
Yep.
And I'm just like, okay, at the end of the interview, I was fully lit up. Like I didn't
Yeah.
have anyone to have sex with, other than myself, but it was like I could do it because it was like I'm fully lit up. Shakti was running through me, and I was like, this is going to be so exciting, because now we're coming out of the wrecking ball and the destruction, and we're owning it. We're getting it. So I'll stop there. It's like, this is your domain. This is your domain.
No, no, no. I love this. This is so beautiful, Kenlyn. And it's almost like the destruction. And if we weave sexuality into creation, which is what it is, right? We go from destruction to now we're in the sexually creative, juicy, charged place of how are we going to make love? That's almost how it feels. Like it's not like we're being impregnated yet. It's how are we going to make love this year with all of the different things that we make love to? And there must be a better way to make love to each other, to make love to the world, to make love to government systems, to make love to the way we educate, to, right? Like this making love thing is really what I'm feeling. And if I can share just a little bit of reflection of what's going on for us this year so far, our last 2 YouTube videos have been on the sacred prostitute. That's just what has arisen. And it's also been what our community is asking for. So it's the energy that's organically arising, and it's what our community is asking for is this energy, is this making love energy, this sacred sexuality. Sacred union is another huge thread for us, huge topic for us, huge theme. The one program that we are launching or doing right now, the only program that we're pouring all of our energy into is the program called Reunion, which is the making love within self of masculine and feminine energies. It is, and all of the other aspects of self, not just those 2 individually. So I want to throw the ball back, pass it back over to you. This is like playing volleyball, and I'm going to pass it back over to you.
Ooh, that is so, I love the way you really contained that, shaped that. Because see, so this is what I'm like, we have these energies, and most of us have no clue what they mean. We're all like, what does that mean? How does that work? But when we start being in the conversation with each other, we're shaping these energies, we're giving form to them. And that's so important for the conscious mind to have, because then it starts to orient our way of being and where we're headed. And you're right, even in our group too, after all of those videos igniting the sexuality, we're seeing women like, oh my God, I'm owning and claiming the parts of me that I didn't even know was there, or I knew, and you're reminding me I suppressed. So I'm feeling we're coming out of the woundology, acknowledging the wounds, and then asking, how do we make love? And I love the idea that we're not impregnated yet. Like there's more that we're creating, but we're not going to miss a step.
Yes.
And consciousness has it. She has it down. We're not going to miss a step. Yeah, say what you're going to say.
No. I have so many feels, Kenlyn. Every time you and I weave together, it's just this whole body experience, this whole being experience that happens. And it's just stunning and glorious, and just the truth chills and everything that's going on as we kind of talk and weave. There's a piece I want to ask you about around feeling into the summit and the community who's gathered around the summit. So the leaders as well as the participants of the summit, and feeling into like, where are we at with sexuality, with this, like, if you were going to say, like, where collectively, of course, we're all individually at very, very different levels, but collectively, like, where are we at? Are we, I would just love to pass that piece over to you.
Ooh, that is next level. Gosh, and I would really love to curate that conversation inside of our communities.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to try to put my pulse, I'm going to put my finger on the pulse as I can. And I think the best way I've always known to speak about stuff like this is to also speak about how it's moving through me, because that's the most honest thing I can say. Collectively, the conversation is happening. So let's just say we know that. Collectively, it's on the table. It was not on the table last year. In fact, really,
I'm with you 100%.
Not at all.
Yep.
We tried to bring it through, and that interview got rescheduled many, many times. It was the last interview that got done. The person was ill and had gone through also a huge interpersonal thing. So it was not, it was a beautiful transmission, but not of the energetics that are occurring now.
Right.
So just presencing the juxtaposition, I'm going to say that now that energy, it came through, various speakers, Shakti, like Himalaya and I, in the opening ceremony. We did that after the sacred courtesan. We did, after several of the others were Edgewalker, high priestess, those were cut. So there's a way that sexuality is on the table. And as a collective, I believe we are recognizing that holy goddess, there's a whole power that we have not used, we have not utilized, we have not run through our bodies. And fear, abuse, burned at the stake, literally and figuratively, of all the reasons why we haven't. We had legitimate reasons for that not happening. And there's something about the way that 2020 ran itself, and I even really believe that my suspicion is it has a lot to do too with the people of color and Black people who stood up to really say, this is so not okay.
Yeah.
And that there's just some, I don't know, unleashing of, you're right, that's not okay. And so's this not okay. And this is not okay. And I have this power. And so I think I don't know yet. I'll be able to say more later, but as looking prospectively, I'm just going to say, like, I'm feeling there's some contribution that was pretty significant. And then I'll say, like, from my own experience, I have known that I have been playing that area of my life through, like, attachment issues, sexuality through my attachment issues, anxious, avoidance, like that kind of dynamic. And for the first time for me personally, I'm feeling like, oh, wow, there's a liberation inside my being that is whole and complete, that isn't engaging the attachment issues, and is running that energy for my own pleasure, not to get something, not to manipulate someone, not to even be sexy. It's just for me.
Yep.
So does that support, like, is that what
Totally.
Tell me what you're dialing
into.
Into.
Yes. So the piece that I'm feeling, and it's almost like I'm going to jump ahead. I'm feeling that everything that you're saying, and I'm in absolute agreement with, it was like it wasn't on the table in 2020. It was just not, it was so much destruction, so much stripping, so much Kali, like you were just beautifully speaking. This is not okay. And this is not okay. And this is not okay. And who wants to make love when we're wielding a sword? You know, like rarely are we able to embody both energies of like make love while wielding a sword. This is not okay. Like that's a really like extreme expression of divinity when we're able to do that. But so I'm so agreeing with you. And now I'm feeling that that's coming alive as well in the collective. The sexuality piece is coming alive. The part that I'm finding very interesting, and this is what you sparked in me when you were speaking, was if we're going to now be shifting into, in whatever way we are, because it's very individual for all of us, but we're going to be shifting into a way of expressing our sexuality or of exploring our sexuality, whether that be with ourselves or that be in the world in some way, or that be with an individual or individuals in some way. It makes me go into the part around now as the feminine, we're going, where's the masculine? Where's the divine masculine in this? Whether that's in myself, that's in the world, or that's in another. If there is to be this exploration of our sexuality, right? And this making love to who? To what? How do we want to do that? Where do we want, like, what are we called to do? And I'm feeling like this year there will be this shift, and this is kind of part of just what's coming through for us in our community and in the programs that are being created for us, like Reunion, it's open to men, right? But this like shift over of, I now, if I'm really opening up to the fullness of my feminine, I now have to look at, well, is my masculine able to hold the fullness of my feminine? Like, if I'm opening up to the fullness of my sexuality, well, where is my masculine counterpart to that can support that can help awaken me to my fullness in my sexuality? Or where is that in another human being? So my sense, this is just my sense, is that there's going to be this, almost spotlight put on divine masculine. If not this year, to me, that's kind of what's happening now, is we got to really shine the light on toxic masculine last year, right? Like toxic masculinity and toxic masculine. And now it's okay. Where's the evolution there? So I would love to pass that back over to you, how that feels for you, or what you're seeing or sensing.
Oh, I'm so lit up by that. Yes, yes, yes. And there's several parts that I want to point to, and I'm gonna point to the part that you said first, because I really want us as a community to hold this as a declaration, knowing, like from what I said at the beginning, we're creating the future, the stages of consciousness. So let's like say, yes, we have a fully liberated divine masculine in his power in the world as guardian, as warrior, as lover, as magician, as king. Like, yes to all of that becoming awakened, and they're overcoming their woundology around, I was not ever able to cry. So now they're in their hearts and crying and strong and totally in their root. So yes, I feel I was told several years ago in my leadership program, one of the teachers said that the masculine's going to have their day really soon. She said 5 years. So I think it's probably happening sooner, because we're watching the beginnings as we're creating the beginnings. So I want to presence that and absolutely hold space for the other. And what's so exciting to me that when you were sharing that I was lit up in my body is that for the first time, it was like after the summit, what I felt in myself was the sexually expressed, sexually freed divine masculine in
Oh,
myself.
wow.
Right, right, right. So that baller in the boardroom kind of one who I know so well, it actually, I started to play with that energy, becoming the lover to my feminine. And why that was so important for me was because all these years I've been looking, I've been seeking and looking. Are you, and honestly, I have to, I'll call myself out. Like in those old periods, I was like, are you my mommy? I would be asking the masculine, like, are you my mommy? Because I was really looking to be healed
Yeah.
and for validation. And after the summit, I was like, no, like, give it to yourself, woman. And I was like, I can. And I'm kind of playing with that, but really, truly, it happened to me as a revelation of giving it to myself. And I can feel that that's part of the creation, the co-creation of what's coming is because I'm actually manifesting it on the inside. Does that make
Oh,
sense?
one, yes, it makes absolute sense. Two, I just want to give you the biggest shout out for being so vulnerable and so real and so raw and so
Mm,
honest. I think that gives
thank you.
so many people permission to just go, shit, I can relate.
Mm,
I was actually looking for this in a lover. I was looking for daddy. I was looking for mommy. I was looking for something in a lover. So, woman, like, oh,
mm,
thank you. That is just
mm,
beautiful and amazing. And to hear where things are at for you right now, where things are
mm.
at for you now. Like, oh, I feel the liberation. I feel the freedom. And there's this excitement in my body too of just like, ah! And this is going to lead me in. We could talk about this forever, and I could talk about sacred sexuality, and I could talk about divine union for forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. But I know that there's this genius that you have, and I really want to be able to tap
Mm,
into that and to share that. And it's this piece that you were talking about around like manifesting that on the inside,
mm,
right? I don't know the exact words, but it was something along those lines of it being on the inside. And then what that kind of took me to was
mm,
that being created on the inside, how does that then call it in on the outside, in the physical world or in relationship or the physical expression of that? And we can weave through that, but what I really want to weave into, and this was kind of the next topic I wanted to get into, was, you and I, we hold retreats and we hold workshops and we hold these big, beautiful spaces, and you've just created this beautiful summit, which is very experiential, and there's meditations and there's all of this inner exploration. But then it's like when the rubber meets the road, like how do we bring this into daily life? How do we translate all of this goodness that we're doing, all of this reclamation, this healing, this awakening, this evolving on the inside, and bring it into our physical world and gift the world with it, bring it into our relationships, into our sex lives, into our family lives, into our work. And that's what I would love to
mm.
dive into next.
Yes, yes, yes. That question I love so much because it really is why I'm here. It's the template of how I was formed, created, and how
I feel
consciousness
that truth in
runs
my
through
heart.
me.
It like pierces my heart, and I feel that so strongly in you. And I'm so happy we're opening this door. That's all I want to say. It's just I feel it
Mm,
in my heart so that truth so deeply.
yeah, and I feel like that's how I got conscripted by the by the goddesses into the awakening and rising of the divine feminine because she was like, you really get that we got to bring this work out into the world. So there will be people who go into the depths of people's wounds, like my good friend Ina, who's the shaman. She'll like go there with you. There's depth teachers like yourself, like like your brilliance is astounding, and you help people understand these energies and use them. So everyone, we all have a role. We're weaving these tapestries, and part of my divine masculine gets to be in service to the divine feminine to bring the work out into the world. And that's another way that I wanted to presence that how we make love in that sacred union on the inside is how we make love to the world, like in
Yes.
our projects. Yes,
Yes.
yes, in our expression. And so part of like after the summit, I enroll people into the Divine Feminine Inner Circle, and that work is about bringing your vision. Well, really getting a vision if you don't have one, bringing it to life, and then bringing it out into the world. And that's my particular jam, because I'm very aware that if we're not doing that, then I'm just doing math and I'm looking at how many people there are on the planet. Just okay, how do we get to 7 billion and growing? Oh, I get it. We create an army. So you and I and others are here to train up teachers, to train up leaders. And to me, leaders isn't that top hierarchical structure. It's, of course, the leadership of your own life, the leadership of your circle. And the thing, and I'll say this and hopefully like hear this, the thing you're here to do. My story is I've tried to do many, many things because I can do many things. I'm a projector in human design, for God's sake. I'm interested in everything. I can do anything and everything, but they didn't work. Things didn't work as in terms of the flourishing of my dharma until I landed on what is mine to bring. And there's some grieving, right? Because if you like to play bright, shiny objects, I like them all. I had to start saying, like, using the divine masculine to focus and choose. And so what I'm noticing, like in my community, is the feminine wants to serve so much. And a lot of the people who come and work with me in my business groups or in the inner circle have a lot of feminine energy that they didn't really value at all. And they are scared of masculine structure, like technology is a big one.
Right.
And and you know, scheduling and calendars and being responsible for other people. Like there's lots of things that stops them from contributing. And so I'm so gratified that I get to actually be an interruption to that. And I represent for them that masculine, like side that can grow their own masculine while holding the frequency of the heart open. And yes, we're not going to do it the same way. We're not going to work 80 hours a week and run ourselves into the ground. We're actually going to care for ourselves and work that yoga of she who wants to be fluid and she who wants some damn rails. She wants some banks to that river so she knows what she's doing next. So that I feel like the thing that we get to do is as a collective, and I'll end here, and is to just we get to bring it out, and there's an art form to it. Today I listened to my women were working on our uh, our messaging really in my class, and so many people's messaging is so broad that no one can find them.
Yes.
And so then the feedback comes back of like, oh, maybe I'm not really needed, and it's like no, 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 no. So how about playing with this laser message? And then I watch the body light up. So there's a yoga that we're now being asked to embody that has the fullness of who we are, but targeted and focused.
You are speaking divine union. You are literally speaking, like you're talking on one level about the union and the marriage of the divine feminine, the divine masculine, right? And the harmony of the two and how they do this thing together. And what I'm hearing you say is so many women are so fully open to the feminine, to the intuitive, to the creative nature, to the love, to the wanting to serve, but lacking or almost like what would most help them is the developing of masculine capacities to bring that out into the world, to be that laser-like focus, to be able to cut through things that they need to cut through, to be able to organize, to coordinate, to work with technology, to find words, to even like communicate and find words to translate what is this big, beautiful service energy and love energy into something that brains can comprehend, which is a linear, logical, masculine-ish thing. So this is just pure magic.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like your message and my message, like the way that I'm just wanted to just presence this, like our communities, because I watch them in both of our groups. I'm in your group and you're in my group, and I watch the communities, and I really feel like it's so supportive of each other, because there's this depth that you bring about these wisdom teachings and spirituality. And then that allows me to take that and be like, okay, now let's craft it, mold it, shape it for consumption on the world platform.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is so incredibly magical. Can you share the name of your Facebook group? So I know everyone knows our Facebook group, and I'll put links to both my Facebook group and Kenlyn's Facebook group below. But can you just share the name here on the podcast for those who are maybe listening and won't read descriptions of things?
Yeah, it's called Divine Feminine Sisterhood Rising.
Yeah, it's a beautiful space. Especially, I love it during summit time because it's just so like wild and beautiful. And it's probably similar to our Facebook group when we do reunion. It'll just be wild and beautiful and these shares and experiences and just so much love bombing going on.
Mm-hmm. And so much popping. And I'm watching that. Yeah, I've watched that in your group and my group, just the popping. And what's so important about being in community right now is that you can pop. If you're not popping, you can get in the group and pop.
Absolutely. So there's this other piece that I just want to feel if there's anything else around this making manifest, bringing into the physical world. There's a thread here that I'm feeling that's like just on the other side of the veil. And I don't know if there's anything you feel to share in this moment, Kenlyn.
Yeah. I had to choose. And so now I get to go back to that one that I didn't get included.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I think that when I'm talking about bringing that energy of the divine masculine inside of me and learning how to make love with my own energy as a way of satisfying myself, of being the fullness of myself, not even to get anything on the external world, like it's complete and whole in and of itself. What happens naturally is the outer reflects the inner.
This is it.
Yeah.
You just nailed it. That's exactly the thread that I was feeling. Yeah.
That's exactly. And so, and the cool thing too, is that the little elves, like when we do that, the little elves get dispatched, the magical elves, and they come to your house even. So Manifestation Queen in my summit is Shelley Bullard, and she teaches manifestation, particularly how to find your partner. So she ends up, I don't even know Shelley, like a month ago or whatever. She ends up on the floor in my house, cuddling with me and my friend, because my friend brought her over to introduce her, and I only had 15, 20 minutes to talk, like that's, how funny we are. I've
Uh-huh.
only got a little bit of time. And then she comes over and she's like got a message for me. And I'm like, whoa. Like, and thank goddess I'm awake enough to know when a message is in front of me. And and so she's like, my friend's like, do you know what she does? And I was like, no. And she tells me, and it's like the inner part of myself that wanted to create that energy, but didn't quite know how. The
Yep.
little elf came and actually literally landed on the floor on my sheepskin and a little snuggling, and showed, I didn't know who she was, and
Yeah.
showed me how.
Uh,
And so then of course I had to invite her to the summit, and of course she said yes. And then of course, like, we're weaving even that here now, and so just to let us all know we're not alone. We don't
yeah.
have to know how to do it.
And we sometimes think like that's where we get in trouble, right? Is the overthinking. And we think that it has to look a certain way, or it's going to be so hard, or, oh my gosh, to shift my relationship or to call in a healthier, more supportive, more nourishing, more aligned relationship is going to be nearly impossible. But what I'm always talking about is that the external has to follow the internal. The internal shifts happen, the physical follows. Like energetic shifts happen, physical follows. It's a little bit slower typically, right? But it follows suit. So I love that we're talking this thread too, and just that it doesn't necessarily have to be some long drawn out, reflective practice and journaling for hours about how am I going to bring this into my life. Like, of course, those are really beautiful things to do when they support and they're right. But a lot of times it's what you're saying is it just happens. And we're like, oh,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
glad I did that retreat. Oh.
And I think there's a component here that it's kind of like warning, um, but in a good way. Like, it will involve surrender. It just
Yes.
will. Like so, like when you presence that thing about, oh, I want my relationship to look a certain way. Um, I'm hearing so many of my close friends, they really got up against the wall and had to like come to the place internally where they let it go. They let
Oh,
it all go.
yeah.
And their thought in their mind was, okay, we're getting a divorce, or da 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 da. And, the body goes into fear and fight or flight or anxiety or whatever trauma. But what happens when we get to that wall and we let go, what I see is like we start to reconfigure as who we really are. We get our power back. And nothing, I, I'm going to say it this way, but nothing can happen without your power online. Nothing you want, not the desires you really want. It needs your power online. So then I'm watching now some magic start to happen inside of those conversations that, when I got the call, didn't have a lot of magic to them.
Yep.
And I'm like, yeah, so it really reaffirms my own faith and my own trust in when we're holding on so tightly, the very things that we're nurturing inside in inner are going to require this to be let go and really free fall into the divine.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm so glad you're weaving in the surrender piece. The surrender our little picture over to something that can be so much greater. Surrender over our upper limits, our little ways of thinking, the stuff that's kept us stuck in the same thing forever, is surrendering it over to, I don't even actually know what it looks like, what the thing that most serves me looks like, what the highest form of relationship I could be in right now. I don't actually even know what that looks like, but I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to trust. I'm going to invite it in. I'm going to hold that, but I'm not going to attach to it, cling to it. I just love that. And if it's all right, Kenlyn, to reference before you and I started the recording, is that all right?
Yeah, totally.
Kenlyn and I, we get on the call together, and before we started recording, we were talking about, like, thank goodness that there's something much greater than me moving things, because I would sabotage the crap out of things.
Yeah, totally.
This reminds me of that.
Absolutely. So hopefully that provides you some salve to others, that you really, that there's still a personality running who wants to be comfortable, who doesn't want to surrender, who doesn't want to go to her edge, who hates cold showers, who hates 6 a.m., who hates all of that stuff, and who hates like working through other people's crap, like in relationship. Why can't they just get it together? Why can't they just stop triggering me? There's like, that person's there, and she's not running the show.
Oh, that's it. Yep. So often we talk about the little self taking the back seat, the ego, the false self gets in the passenger seat, gets out of the driver's seat and is in the passenger seat. And the way that you spoke it is just, it's perfect. It's perfectly that.
Well, what I love about your work too is that you've actually, from what I've heard, is that you've helped women liberate even the way the ego plays, because the ego can be this controlling mechanism. And then there's also the feminine can take the egoic structure of tolerating everything and saying she's not spiritual. Like, I'll tolerate the bad behavior, I'll tolerate the abuse, because that's more spiritual and less egoic. And what I hear in so much of your teachings is like, no, we get to bring Kali Ma out. We get to be fierce. We get to be pissed. We get to say enough. And that's not egoic. That's actually this, like, there's that
that's
concept.
Love. That's truth.
Love.
That's
Exactly.
fierce grace.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
God, we
I
can
love
go into
that.
that for another hour. There's one piece, Kenlyn, I know we only have about 10 minutes left together. There's one piece that I want to go into, and then I have a question at the end to ask you. But the piece that I would love to open the door to is, I know we've kind of talked about what we're seeing coming in 2021, kind of themes of the summit, but I would love to talk about feminine reclamation today. Like, not, because I think we sometimes hear the word feminine reclamation and we're like, oh, it's like reclaiming the ancient ways, right? Like ancient women's wisdom, or bringing back the divine feminine. But I want to talk about, yes, this, I know you have stuff around this. Please.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. When you say reclamation, what I take that to mean is reclaiming the lost parts of me.
Yes, same.
And I know that's your work, and that's what Reunion is about, the lost parts. And truly, that's the only reclamation we really need to be doing, because the fullness of who we are, the aliveness of who we are, we have the codes. We are including and transcending the feminine of the pre-patriarchal feminine.
Yes.
Right? We are including her and transcending her. She would not, that woman is not for this Aquarian age.
Yes.
So it's incredible because we're not alone, we're not lost. We have all the codes inside us that we're awakening to, and that's really why I have the summit initiating an archetype, because my theory is you have them all. Let's awaken them all so that you are more powerful. You are awake to your power, and therefore you can lead. You can be confident in leading, confident in impacting. And I want to say confident in making money, because that's a big breakdown of the feminine that I would like to restore, to reclaim our ability to make money. And I know we want to make it differently. So let's create that. So what we're creating as a worldview, as what gets it, we're including and transcending. We are living her right now, and it's going to take reclaiming all parts of us. And that's why I think the wound work is important, because we have left parts of us on the table due to horrific shit that's happened to us in our childhood, in our early lives. And when we reclaim the innocence, we reclaim the purity, and I love purity. That's one of my touchstones. And we reclaim the power, the sovereignty, all the things, the sexuality, the connection with the divine, the embodiment. Then we, sisters, you, me, all of us, brothers who are inhabiting their feminine, divine feminine, we're going to create what's next.
Love that. Love that. Love that. Love that. Love that. It's interesting that you referenced Ken Wilber's work at the start. And I've just been listening to little pieces here and there as like little things trickle in, and they just seem to light up exactly what's going on in my world at the right time. And there was a thing he was saying. He's like, Buddha's enlightenment is not today's enlightenment. Like, it is not the same thing. And I think that was such a very powerful statement. So to the point, very simple, very clear. It is not the same. It is not the same. Fully in our feminine today is not the same as my grandmother's generation or, hundreds of years ago. It's not the same. And it also brings me to the place of practices that worked 5 decades ago, 300 years ago, do not work today. We are wired differently. Our brains are incredibly different. Our bodies are different. Our societies are different. Everything is so different. And so I'm so glad that we were able to kind of just open the door to this and to speak this and to, just kind of shine some light on some of that. So if there's anything else you want to weave in here.
Well, I do want to weave in, when I was reading the Gaia Codex to my group back in the summer, I just did it on a whim. And what stood out to a lot of women were these 64 codes of the priestess. And the Gaia Codex names a few, but the thing about what Sarah Drew said about the Gaia Codex is that it's a living transmission.
Yeah.
And so she was like, of course, I'm not going to tell you what they are because you're living them. You tell me what they are. And so that's the invitation right now. Like, you get to tell us, what does that feminine look like who's fully reclaimed? What does she feel like? I'm learning as I witness the posts in our group and in your group. I'm learning who she is. I'm feeling myself. When I hear you say it and I track it in here, it awakens something in here. So of course, we now know that being in community has an exponential mirror effect that perhaps other generations and millennia ago did not have. And now we have a global thing happening.
Yeah.
We have this Zoom thing happening.
Yeah.
And so those of you who have said, oh, I hate technology, like, we can seriously get over that.
We have to, right? We've had to over in 2020.
And if any resistance, like, I'm not going to start my business and do technology. It's like, yeah, you are. You actually
Yeah.
are. And that doesn't mean you're going to exclude in person when that's allowed. But there's this thing that wants to be woven. She is doing it.
Yes. 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 I mean, like, if we want to go kicking and screaming, that's fine. It's still going to happen. We are still being rewired to transmit beyond just in person, right? Like, we are learning how to we are evolving into being able to transmit through time and space in a way that we've never been able to, through being in the same room in physical presence in a way that we've never been able to. Like, I can't
100%.
even begin to fathom the amount of evolving we just did as humanity because of 2020 and because of the technology that we've had to do. I can't even fathom like what little new spidey senses have just come online. I mean, there's some that I can definitely sense and feel, and I know I have all these new different spidey senses. But for us as a collective,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, so what's going to happen when telepathy and remote viewing and all that, like, I mean,
It's just not an abnormal thing anymore. It's just a common occurrence. It's just we aren't hiding any. How good is that? There's no hiding.
right, transparency, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, so now do the work of getting super clear with all that's in here, because pretty soon
Because we're
everyone's
all
going to
going to
see
see
it.
it anyways. Oh my God, I
Isn't it
love it.
fantastic? It's just
Oh,
insanely amazing. Like, look, we incarnated now.
I know.
Wow, the biggest sea change, the probably the biggest leap
Yep.
that humanity will make. I mean, who knows? I don't know, but there was a pretty damn big leap.
Sure.
So, thank you,
Oh,
thank you.
woman, I know that we have to end this, and I don't want to. We could talk all day, all night, and into probably weeks upon weeks upon weeks. But I would love to ask you the question. I'd love to ask you two questions. First, like, what is top of mind for you, or what's singing to you loudly right now? What's coming through in your work? What are you really called to? What are you really drawn to? I know we've talked about a lot of things, and I know a lot of those things are singing to you, but if there's anything else that's kind of top of mind for you or really present for you right now. And
Yeah,
then
thank
the
you, thank you.
question
Yeah.
after that will just
Okay.
be, where can everyone find you? And we'll of course have links and descriptions and all of that stuff, but where can everyone find you and your
Okay.
work and things about you? So those two things I would love to.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. I feel honored that you asked that question too, because it's such a privilege to be able to name the very nascent pieces that are coming through. Like I don't know if y'all really get this, but it's like this stuff is happening moment by moment daily where I don't know the next step. It's given. And what was given after the summit was that my work gets to include training people to hold the space. So the Divine Feminine Inner Circle, the last class gets to become facilitators of the next class. And then, and so what I'm seeing is I get to create a structure that has people on the mat right after the learning, the going through the feminine empowerment process and purpose clarity process, visioning, then they get to actually teach it to others. And it's so ironic because that's what I was attracted to with Kundalini yoga. And then of course that went through a major Plutonian breakdown. And yet that little seed I I really took in, and it just I forgot about it, and it started to sprout after the summit. And so it's really about structure. It's really about training facilitators and teachers to do the work. And I get to serve them in their flourishing. And that makes me super excited. Thank you for asking.
Wow. Yum. And where can everyone find more about your work and about you?
Well, my website, you can go to kenlynkolleen.com. You can also go to evolvingsisters.com and it takes you to kenlynkolleen.com. And of course, I'd love to see you in the Facebook group, Divine Feminine Sisterhood Rising.
Oh, woman, what an honor and what a pleasure. And thank you for being our very first guest on the podcast. Thank you. All right. On the count of three, we'll just say like, I love you, I love you, I love you to everyone. And then I'll switch us off. All right. On the count of three. 1, 2, 3.
I love you.